ever met, I'm Michael Price, and I want to help you succeed in growing your business.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today is March 25, 2026, and if you have a VA mental health rating or, even if you're thinking about filing for one, you really need to listen to this.
Oh, absolutely. The clock is officially ticking right now.
Yeah, we are exactly 6 months away from a total ground-up overhaul of the entire system.
Right? At the end of September 2026, the way the VA evaluates, measures, and even compensates mental health conditions is going to fundamentally change.
It's massive. So our mission today is urgent. We're pulling from the VA's own transition strategy notes alongside this really fantastic, incredibly detailed breakdown from the YouTube channel Veterans Info tab.
Yeah, that channel did a great job laying out the nuts and bolts of this.
They really did. And our goal today isn't to just read you a boring list of bureaucratic updates. We want to give you a highly specific, actionable blueprint.
Exactly. We're going to explore how the VA's new 5 functional domains actually work.
And how to identify your own symptoms within them, right?
Yeah, right. And most importantly, we're going to give you the exact script for how to discuss severity levels with your healthcare provider.
Before that September deadline hits.
Right, because the specific steps you take right now, like during the 6-month window, will probably dictate your compensation and care for years.
Years. Okay, so let's build the foundation here. Before we get into the how of documenting symptoms, we need to understand the why.
Right? Why the rush?
Yeah, why is the old system being thrown out, and why is doing this paperwork right now the most strategic move a veteran can make?
Well, the old system was, it was fundamentally flawed. It basically looked at a veteran's mental health as a single blurry photograph.
Just one big picture.
Yeah. They used this generalized rating schedule that just lumped occupational and social impairment into one giant bucket.
Meaning they basically averaged you out, right?
Exactly, averaged you out.
Like if you managed to hold down a job and showed up to work every day, the old system might look at you and say, well, you're functioning.
Right. Even if, say, your marriage was completely collapsing and you were isolating yourself from everyone you love.
Wow, so it penalized you for functioning in one area?
That is the exact problem.
Yeah.
Averaging out mental health heavily penalized veterans who were, high functioning at work but completely debilitated at home.
That makes so much sense.
But the new system untangles that web. And the reason we are talking about this today, 6 months before the change, is because of a legal mechanism called transcending.
Transcending. Okay, I want to make sure we make this concept crystal clear for everyone. Let's look at the actual calendar.
Okay, let's do it.
The new rules kick in at the end of September, so if you file a claim on, say, September 29th, what actually happens?
Okay, so if you file on September 29th, your claim is submitted under the old rules. But because the VA backlog is what it is, they almost certainly won't process and decide your claim until after the new rules officially take effect in October or November.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. Because your claim straddles that implementation line, the law dictates that the VA must review your medical evidence against both the old criteria and the new criteria.
It's like submitting a bid to 2 different contractors at the exact same time.
That's a good way to put it.
And the state basically legally forces you to accept whichever contractor offers you the most money. Like the VA compares the 2 separate rating schedules.
And they are legally obligated to lock you into whichever one gives you the higher disability rating.
That's incredible. It's like being grandfathered into a cell phone plan, but in reverse. You get to test drive the new plan and keep whichever one gives you the most data.
Exactly. That dual review is your safety net. You are preserving your rights under the old system while opening the door to the massive benefits of the new one. And there is one benefit in particular that makes filing right now absolutely crucial for a very specific group of veterans.
Okay, what is it?
Under the proposed MEI schedule, the 0% rating for mental health is dead.
Wait, I need to pause you there to make sure I'm hearing this right.
Yeah.
If the VA is eliminating the 0% rating entirely, does that mean every single veteran currently sitting at 0% automatically gets a bigger check in the mail come October? Is it automatic?
No. And that is a dangerous assumption to make.
Okay, clarify that.
The VA does not just automatically run a script and upgrade hundreds of thousands of files. If you are sitting at a 0% rating today and you do nothing,
you just stay at 0%.
You will likely stay at 0%. To trigger the new absolute minimum floor, which is 10% simply for having a diagnosed mental health condition, you have to actively file a claim for an increase.
Oh, wow, that makes the timeline even more critical.
It really does.
Because if you procrastinate and wait until October 1st to file, you completely miss out on that dual review safety net.
Right, you're only evaluated under the new system then.
So filing now guarantees you the highest possible outcome from both eras of VA policy.
Which brings us to the new blueprint. To win under this new system, you have to fundamentally change how you talk to your medical providers.
So just going in and saying, I feel bad isn't enough anymore?
Not at all. Walking into a clinic and saying, I feel depressed, or my anxiety is bad is no longer going to cut it. You have to speak the VA's new language.
And that new language is built around what the VA calls the 5 functional domains, right?
That's exactly.
If the old system was that single blurry photograph, the new system is like a 5-lens high-definition camera.
I love that analogy.
They're breaking your daily life down into 5 distinct buckets to measure exactly where the trauma is impacting you. So let's walk through these.
Let's do it because understanding them is the only way to accurately document your struggles. Domain 1 is cognition.
Okay, cognition.
And this isn't just about whether you remember your anniversary. It evaluates executive function. It looks at your memory, your ability to focus, how you process information.
And how you make decisions under pressure, right?
Exactly.
So we're talking about severe brain fog, like losing your train of thought in the middle of a sentence or staring at a simple email at work for an hour because you literally cannot process the steps to answer it.
That's exactly what goes in that bucket. Domain 2 is interpersonal interactions and relationships. This measures your social functioning.
So spouses, kids, coworkers.
Right. How are you interacting with your spouse, your children, your coworkers, or even just strangers at the store?
And I feel like a lot of people misdiagnose themselves here.
Oh, all the time.
They think, well, I don't get into fistfights, so my interpersonal skills are fine. But it's also about isolation, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's actively avoiding your friends, giving your spouse the silent treatment because you're overwhelmed or, experiencing sudden road rage.
Yeah, withdrawal and friction.
Not just physical altercations. Domain 3 is task completion and life activities.
Okay, task completion.
This looks at your ability to manage your time and actually finish what you start, whether that's maintaining your employment duties or just keeping up with household chores.
A graveyard of half-finished projects in the garage.
Exactly.
Starting to mow the lawn and abandoning it halfway through because the mental load suddenly becomes too heavy. It's framing procrastination not as laziness, but as a symptom of mental exhaustion.
Spot on. Domain 4 is navigating environments. This evaluates how you handle physical or social spaces.
Like getting out into the world.
Right? Are you dealing with agoraphobia? Do you have panic attacks in traffic? Can you handle crowded spaces?
The classic example I always hear from veterans is the grocery store.
Oh yes, the grocery store.
Having to abandon a full cart of food in the frozen aisle because the fluorescent lights, the crowds, the noise, it just triggers a massive anxiety spike.
That is the perfect example of struggling to navigate environments. And finally, Domain 5 is self-care. This is looking after your basic everyday needs.
Showering, eating, that kind of thing.
Right. Personal hygiene, dressing yourself appropriately for the weather, and, maintaining a basic diet.
I genuinely love this 5-bucket approach. It completely changes the game.
It really does.
Because under the old rules, a veteran might look at themselves and say, I'm fine, I shower every morning and I go to work.
Right. They are entirely focused on the self-care and task completion domains.
Exactly. But they are completely ignoring the fact that they haven't spoken to their friends in 6 months and they have panic attacks at the grocery store.
Yep. They are failing in the interpersonal and navigating environments domains.
So this new structure forces both the veteran and the VA to acknowledge that trauma is compartmentalized.
But having these 5 new buckets doesn't mean anything if you don't know how the VA weighs what goes inside them. How are they actually measuring the severity of your symptoms within each of these specific areas?
And that brings us to the grading rubric.
Yeah.
The VA is implementing a 0 to 4 severity scale for each of the 5 domains.
Right.
0 means you have no difficulties whatsoever. Level 1 is mild, Level 2 is moderate, Level 3 is severe, and Level 4 is total impairment.
And on the surface, a 0 to 4 scale sounds incredibly straightforward.
Sure.
But there is a massive critical pivot that happens between Level 1 and Level 2. The entire compensation structure hinges on one highly specific concept.
Okay, what is it?
Interference.
Interference. Okay, let's underline that, highlight it, put it in bold font. Why is interference the magic word for veterans looking at this new scale?
Because the VA defines Level 1, which is mild impairment, as having slight difficulties that do not interfere with your daily life.
Okay.
You might feel the internal anxiety at the grocery store. Your heart rate might spike.
But you push through the internal discomfort, you buy the groceries, and you drive home. You completed the tasks.
So Level 1 captures the internal suffering, but there was no external failure.
Exactly. But level 2, which is moderate impairment, requires clinically significant difficulties that actually do interfere with your tasks, activities, or relationships. Wow. Okay.
The suffering is no longer just internal. It is causing a measurable drop in your real-world function.
That is the line in the sand. It actually interferes. You drop the ball.
Right.
You don't just feel anxious at the store, you physically abandon the cart and leave without the food. You don't just feel annoyed at work, you have a verbal conflict with your boss and get written up.
That measurable external interference is what triggers a level 2 rating. And the math on how the VA calculates your overall compensation using these level 2 ratings it's staggering compared to the old system.
Is it?
It is surprisingly attainable.
Let's run the math on that. If a listener can prove level 2, so just moderate impairment that actively causes interference in just one of those 5 domains, what happens?
That single domain warrants a 50% overall disability rating.
Wait, really? Just one domain at level 2 is 50%?
Yes. Let's map that out to make it concrete. Let's say your cognition is sharp, your task completion is great, you navigating environments perfectly, and your self-care is flawless.
So zeros across the board there. Right, those 4 domains are at a 0, but your trauma causes moderate interference in your interpersonal relationships. You are isolating and your marriage is under severe strain.
Okay.
Based on that single domain, you secure a 50% rating.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And what if you can prove level 2 interference in 2 domains, say interpersonal relationships and navigating environments?
That jumps to a 70% overall rating.
Wow. You could have perfect zeros in the other 3 domains, but because your mental health moderately interferes in 2 areas of your life, you hit 70%. That is a monumental paradigm shift.
It allows for absolute precision and compensation, but this new mathematical model raises a very obvious question, one the VA had to explicitly address in their transition strategy.
Which is?
Mental health is almost never a straight line.
Oh, absolutely. It's a roller coaster. I might have a week where my cognition is perfectly fine, followed by a 4-day stretch where I have total brain fog and can't function at all. So how do you grade a roller coaster on a 0 to 4 scale?
The VA addresses the roller coaster with what they call the 25% rule.
The 25% rule?
Yeah. To qualify for any specific severity level, let's stick with level 2, moderate. That level of impairment generally needs to happen 25% or more of the time.
Let's translate 25% into plain English so you, the listener, know exactly what to track in your daily life. 25% of the time means roughly 6 hours out of a 24-hour day.
Exactly.
Or if you're looking at it weekly, it means 1 day out of every 4 days. You do not have to be suffering 100% of the time to lock in these ratings.
The VA is formally acknowledging the cyclical episodic nature of mental health conditions, but they actually take it a step further to accommodate the extreme unpredictability of trauma.
Okay, how so?
They've built in a spike provision.
The spikes?
Yeah.
Like the sudden terrifying drops on the roller coaster?
Right. Consider a veteran whose symptoms are generally well managed, mostly hovering around a level 1, but occasionally they experience incredibly intense, severe episodes. Let's say they hit a level 3 severe impairment, meaning serious difficulties that interfere with life even if they have assistance or accommodations.
Right.
But this severe episode only happens once every 10 days.
Okay. 1 day out of 10 is only 10% of the time, so technically they completely miss that 25% frequency mark required to get a level 3 rating.
Under a rigid system, yes. However, the spike provision acts as an alternate lane. Because those intense level 3 spikes are happening at all, even infrequently, the VA will credit the veteran with a level 2 moderate rating for that domain.
Wait, really?
Yes. A severe episode that happens less than a quarter of the time guarantees you the moderate rating below it.
Okay. I need to test the logic of this spike provision, because I can see a lot of people misunderstanding this.
Let's hear it.
Let's imagine a worst-case scenario, total meltdown, profound difficulties. I'm totally incapable of basic tasks. Maybe I can't even leave my bed.
Which perfectly fits the VA's definition of level 4, total impairment.
Right. But it only happens sporadically, maybe twice a month. It is definitely less than 25% of the time. Does that infrequent, totally debilitating spike give me a level 4 rating?
It does not.
Ah, okay.
And the transition notes are very explicit about this distinction. Because the severity scale caps out at level 4, there is no level 5.
Right.
You cannot spike your way into the absolute highest rating. The spike provision only bumps you into the tier directly beneath the severity of your episode.
Ah, I see the mechanism now. The spike acts like a parachute, catching you 1 level down.
Exactly. A level 4 spike total impairment that occurs less than 25% of the time drops down and grants you a level 3 severe rating.
I gotcha.
If you want to secure a level 4 rating in any domain, which automatically grants a 100% overall disability rating, you must hit that 25% frequency threshold.
So you must be totally impaired for 6 hours a day or 1 full day out of every 4? Okay, so the mechanics of the new system are incredibly clear. The 5 domains make sense. The 0 to 4 scale makes sense. The 25% rule makes sense.
Yeah, the framework is solid.
But knowing all of this esoteric knowledge is completely useless if it doesn't end up written down in your actual medical records.
So that is the most important part.
If you are listening to this, you need a highly specific game plan for your next doctor's appointment.
Because the VA adjudicator reviewing your file in November isn't in the room with you when you have a panic attack.
Right.
They don't see the roller coaster. Their entire decision is based solely on what the medical provider types into their clinical notes. If your doctor doesn't write it down using the right framework.
It didn't happen.
Exactly, it didn't happen.
Since our audience needs actionable advice, let's do some role play here. Let's look at a bad doctor's visit versus a good doctor's visit.
I like this.
A bad visit under the new rules looks like this. You walk in, sit on the exam table, and say, "Hey doc, I've been feeling really down lately. Work is super stressful and my anxiety's acting up."
If you say that, the doctor writes down patient reports feeling anxious and stressed at work.
And to a VA adjudicator, what did that look like?
That perfectly maps to a level 1 mild rating. You described internal suffering, but you demonstrated 0 external functional impact. You just cost yourself your compensation.
Ouch. So here's the exact script for a good visit. The moment the doctor walks in, you take control of the conversation.
You have to.
You literally say, "Doctor, I really want to talk about my mental health today," using the VA's 5 functional domains. And you list them out: cognition, interpersonal, task completion, navigating environments, and self-care.
You have to explicitly guide them. Ask the provider to use the 0 through 4 severity scale in their notes when discussing those areas.
And you give them the evidence of interference. Instead of saying work is stressful, you say, "Doctor, under the interpersonal domain, my anxiety is at a level 2. I know it's a level 2 because it is actively interfering with my life. I am so overwhelmed that I actively hide in my car during my lunch break to avoid my coworkers. And I've started snapping at my kids when I get home."
That is the exact phrasing that secures a rating. You are explicitly connecting the internal feeling to external functional interference. And honestly, you might have to actually educate your provider.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of private doctors and even some VA doctors won't be fully up to speed on the 2026 changes yet. Don't be afraid to define the scale for them. Remind them, level 2 means it's interfering with my life. Level 3 means it's interfering even when I have help.
And to prove the frequency, to prove that 25% rule, you need to bring receipts. Start a journal today. Track your bad days and your bad hours.
That is so crucial.
When you sit down with your doctor, don't just guess. Pull out your phone or your notebook and say, "Over the last month, I hit this level of interference roughly 1 out of every 4 days."
And bring up the sporadic spikes too.
Right. Don't forget the spikes.
If there are days where the brain fog is so thick you can't function, or the anxiety forces you to lock yourself in a bedroom, even if it only happens once a month, your doctor needs to note those intense, infrequent episodes in your records so you can utilize that spike provision.
Let's quickly recap the mission for everyone listening. The deadline is looming. The end of September 2026 is approaching fast. Schedule an appointment with your doctor right now.
Do not wait.
When you go in, frame your struggles explicitly within the 5 functional domains. Have your provider grade those struggles on the 0 to 4 scale, focusing heavily on instances of interference.
Right?
Use a journal to prove the 25% frequency or to log those severe spikes. And finally, file your claim before the end of September to transcend the schedules and force the VA to give you the highest possible rating from both rulebooks.
You know, taking a step back from the immediate urgency of the paperwork, there is something deeply fascinating about this entire policy shift.
What's that?
Well, the VA is moving its entire evaluation framework away from a strictly clinical question like what is the name of your diagnosis, and replacing it with a highly functional question.
Which is, how does this trauma actually interfere with your daily life?
Exactly. It's moving from abstract medical theory into the practical reality of living with invisible wounds.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
And by learning to document your symptoms this way for a bureaucratic claim, I wonder if veterans are actually being handed a profound new blueprint for their personal lives.
A blueprint, how so?
Think about the language we've discussed today. This isn't just a paperwork exercise. This 5-domain structure, separating how you process thoughts from how you interact with others to how you navigate physical spaces, could be the exact blueprint you need to better articulate your struggles to the people who matter most.
What a compelling way to look at it.
It has the potential to turn a stressful, highly bureaucratic process into an incredibly powerful tool for everyday self-advocacy. It gives you a clean, objective vocabulary.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Imagine being able to tell your spouse, hey, I'm totally fine on self-care today, but my interpersonal domain is running at a level 3 right now, so I really need some space to decompress.
Wow, it removes the guilt and replaces it with clarity?
Exactly.
You're taking that 5-lens high-def camera that the VA forced you to build for a claim, and you're turning it outward to finally explain to your loved ones exactly what's going on, rather than just handing them a blurry Polaroid and expecting them to understand.
That is an incredibly powerful takeaway.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 2026 mental health changes. You have the knowledge, you have the blueprint, you know the timeline. Now it's time to take action.
If you found this video helpful, please consider donating to helpallvets.org. Thank you.
A special thank you to MarketUS.com for furnishing us this information. You can reach them at MarketUS.com or call them at 954-636-3232. Before we go, this deep dive was created by the MarketUS.com team. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It's right below the subscribe link.